Have a haven of spirituality is valuable.
That was life-changing.
I'm telling you, it is astounding how deeply McCarty has impacted my life.
It's where individuals are encouraged to grow.
The year 1963 was one of the most eventful years in our nation's history. We lost our president to an assassin. Vice President Lyndon Baines Johnson was sworn in as president aboard Air Force One. The Civil Rights Movement led to a march on Washington, and integration of our college students began. But one of the greatest blessings of that year was found in San Marcos, Texas, with the establishment of the McCarty Student Center, which opened its doors to university students on the campus at Southwest Texas State University. As we look back over the past 6 decades, the McCarty Student Center has played an important role in saving souls for Jesus and in the spiritual formation of Christians throughout the world. Jesus said, "We are to be the light of the world and to let our light shine before men that they may see our good works and glorify God." The following documentary aims to do just that, to give glory to God by giving you several firsthand accounts of the history of the McCarty Student Center and of some of the many ways that God has been at work in the lives of Christian students and in the campus ministry of the University Church of Christ. In this video, you will hear from several Christians whose lives were changed because of this ministry and the role that they had in helping to make the McCarty Student Center and the campus ministry what it is today.
McCarty is a special place, and it's obviously not special because of where it's located or even the condition of the building.
So when we talk about McCarty, we have the building and then the spiritual work that goes on in the building.
I think the McCarty Student Center is probably the focus area for the greatest mission work that the University Church of Christ can be doing.
It was truly a haven in this sort of, ungodly world that exists in a lot of state universities.
I had never been around so many college students that like to study the Bible, like being together.
When we first moved here, in fact, when we talked to the elders about the work at university, I didn't even know what McCarty Student Center was. I had never heard of it. Most people assumed that you had because you were looking at this work connected in the congregation where they housed the work, but I didn't. I was a preacher, had never sent kids to college, didn't live in Texas, so I just didn't know anything about it. And it's been the brightest light of our time here at university is seeing McCarty. It's a place where people can find who they are spiritually, and they don't get that a lot in the world. We talk about finding yourselves and becoming who you are and finding your identity, and we do that in college or first job that you have or when you get married. But a lot of times we don't know who we are spiritually until long after those decisions are made because we've been either sheltered or we haven't been committed to anything. And McCarty gives you the opportunity to be committed to something spiritual early on in life, right out of the gate, getting out of the house, getting to college. And I think people learn what strengths they have, what weaknesses they have, and McCarty helps you work through those to become mature, where you just don't get that. Even on, quote, Christian college campuses, you don't always get that. There's an expectation of who you are because you grew up in the church, or you've been baptized, or you've gone to Bible camp your whole life, or you've done lads leaders, or things like that. And McCarty gives you the chance to get on a real college campus with a lot of temptation and a lot of struggles, and then it provides the spiritual backbone and background for you so you can still make good decisions. I don't know really how to describe it. It's just a unique, valuable place that provides spiritual strength for folks in an area where we don't usually find it. College is a very worldly, secular, hedonistic society. So, and we get a chance to ward off some of that with McCarty.
Back before or when the Student Center was even thought about, Brother Tom McCarty and his wife Lillian were members of the congregation in San Marcos. He was a very jovial person. They didn't have any children, and so they wanted to do something for the church, and so they left his ranch, which was over 400 acres, to the church in San Marcos.
Well, of course, the land evidently was in the family for many, many years and generations, because I know that his mother and his father and a sister and, some relatives were buried on the property. And then, of course, he was a rancher. And I did remember hearing the tale that he was 50 years old before he ever married. And Sister Lillian was a school teacher. He used to ride a horse to church. He didn't drive. Sister Lillian drove. He was very impressed with the students and the teaching, and he wanted to be a part of that.
He chose himself men who he wanted to be trustees, and that was Frank Sharp and Eddie Mutschlechner and my father, Leonard Parker, to be trustees of McCarty Student Center. After his demise, Sister McCarty died first, probably a year or so before he did. And then after he passed on, Dad and the other two sold the ranch, and they bought a place on Guadalupe there, where the McCarty Student Center sits now.
Those three men were charged with the responsibility of taking that money, putting it into a trust, and then making sure that the building was constructed, and that after that the basic primary financial needs of that facility were being maintained. So those and many other Christians were really in that 1950, 1960 era were really, I think, largely responsible for building fires that I and for generations to follow could really warm by. What they built, we were the recipients of.
Once they sold the property, then, and I cannot remember for sure whether they had already picked out the plot for McCarty or not, but anyway, they bought that and made the arrangements to have the building built. Norman Starling was the one that was the director at that time, and he was very, very good. There was a number of students because, for one thing, they could take Bible for credit. And a lot of students came in that knew nothing about the church or anything, and a lot of them were baptized.
There's individuals like Norman Starling who, to be able to sit with him and talk with him about, as a student, what it was like at times before that, and to hear stories of how he helped to get McCarty off the ground and the work that he did at Harding up in Arkansas. It's incredible.
He had a huge impact.
How did he have an impact on your lives?
He was a great leader. He had the personality for the job.
The vision and the concept and the idea of teaching Bible courses for college credit on the campus at Texas State University, or what was then Southwest Texas State University, really began in the early 1950s. And the church asked a member of the congregation, Henry E. Speck, he was a dean of the school at that time, to teach these courses for credit. He did that for about a year or two, but they really needed someone who knew more about the Bible, who had a background, an academic degree in the Bible, and that's when they hired Norman Starling. So he came in the late 1950s and began teaching in that small little house that was on Austin Street. Norman was the director for about 17 years, and then after he left, Carl Garner came and became the second, really the third Bible chair director, and he taught for 11 years. And I got to come basically at the end of that, so that by the time that Carl was nearing his end and I came as a student and took his classes, then they asked if I would start working as a student evangelist. Then Norman came back for about 2.5 years when Brother Garner left to go be the preacher in Dripping Springs. And so I worked with Brother Starling for about 2 years, and then he turned it over to me, and I served as the director for about 4 or 5 years.
I graduated high school at the end of May of 1966, and like the next week, I moved to San Marcos, lived with my brother and sister-in-law. So during that summer of 1966, I started having some involvement at McCarty, attending some of the summer devotionals.
When I started going to the student center with my roommate, and of course she was there too, which made things nice, and we played in the band, and that was nice. But, then I started studying with Norman Starling, and I was baptized in April of 1964.
They said, you just got to come, so much fun. And the retreats are great, and so I started going, and I loved it very much because the students they weren't on again, off again. If you went to a devotional, you would see the same people there every Monday, every Tuesday.
It was a large amount of students at that time. They were just like a big family. A lot of them are still members of the church here, like Joe Bannon and Buddy Martin. There were a lot of marriages.
We would go to devotionals.
Right.
And then we would go to the Sonic.
We went together there. I met her in January, and we married in August. I won't tell them about the fact that you said you'd never date me as long as I lived.
That's not why you're here, honey.
When I came to McCarty Student Center, that's where I met my wife. And countless numbers of students over the years could say the same thing, that they met their wife through the campus ministry at Texas State University.
That's a lot of people's stories. I mean, you have people who, Buddy Martin and Joe Bannon, who found their spouses at McCarty, 40, 50 years ago.
I was a spiritual train wreck. I was in really, really bad shape spiritually. And my brother, who is younger than me, was active at McCarty, and he said, hey, you got to come down here and try this. I think it's what you need, and you're going to like it. And he got me down in 1972, and I wasn't here a week or two when we had a retreat, and that was life-changing.
I think one of my earliest recollections of the Student Center was the day I walked through the door during my registration week prior to my freshman year, and being elated that I could find a place so near to campus that would be sort of a home away from home for me. And when I saw university students, people my own age, on their own deciding that they were going to gather together to sing and to study God's Word, and that there were spiritual conversations going on, that impressed me. It impressed me and it encouraged me, because I began to realize I'm not alone, that there are other people my age, as young as I was at the time, that were serious about following Jesus, that were serious about Bible study, that wanted to know more about how to live the Christian life.
I think back and I say, wow, it saved my spiritual life and so many others. It was just phenomenal. The 70s, about the early times. It was just, it's hard to describe really just how really good it was. It just, every week, that McCarty was busy and full, and people were not just studying the Bible, but hanging out together, playing 42, cards. I mean, they wanted to be down there and with each other. They found their oasis on the campus there, with what we had there.
There was a devotional Monday night, Tuesday night, Bible class Wednesday night, and devotional Thursday night. Every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday night, there was a devotional at McCarty.
They would go door to door and try to sign up people for Bible studies. And we remember having a couple of them just walk in off the street, having been converted.
And once a year, McCarty usually does a mission trip.
What's different about McCarty than some other church works is that people come in for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then they go out, and it's almost like a missionary training program. Because as someone is getting their secular degree at Texas State, they're coming in and they're also hopefully getting that spiritual training to go out as well. Every year that we went to Jamaica, the college students had to study the Bible with one of their peers. And some of them, they studied with maybe a family member, or maybe they studied with a college professor. But in order to prepare for going into the foreign mission field, they had to study with one of their peers. And that got and regularly bred an environment of evangelism that just took off like wildfire.
So the building was there from the 1960s, 65, until roughly the last 3 or 4 years, when it finally received a much needed facelift and reconstruction, and it's been a total renovation of that entire facility, which was needed many years ago, but we're glad to see it's finally happening.
In the time that I've been associated with it, it's gone from out of date and almost falling in to completely renovated on the inside.
The building was sinking and settling. We had cracks in the walls. The big back room, you could about stick your hand clear through the wall at one time. And the side doors was just about to fall out, and we had other cracks. We didn't have enough money to hire a contractor. And we just asked some of the board people. Somebody said, well, you old guys can't do all of that. And so they probably shouldn't have made that statement, because we decided we could. All of us is over 65, so they called us a geriatric crew. And we would meet on Tuesdays and work. And we tore down brick. We had to tear all of the old roof out. We scraped probably 1.5 tons of gravel off what had originally been a flat roof. It had been covered up. Just absolute hard work.
We have made huge strides since 2014, I think, is when we broke ground for the beginning of the renovation. We regularly have people who walk in, and the first time they see it, they're like, wow. And this is not people who saw the old McCarty and see what it is now. This is just general people walking in. And like, wow, this space is beautiful. I didn't know this was here. I can't wait to come prep for class or whatever.
When I first walked in, after being there as a student a long time ago for movie nights, it was dark, I didn't pay attention. But as an adult, when I first walked back in, it was very concerning to me how closed off from the world the space felt, and how there were no views out and no real natural light. It was very cave-like. And so that was one of my big motivations, is to bring the light in, but also bring the views in. Let people see the activity inside the center so that it's an inviting place and not a scary place to come visit. To be welcoming and friendly and warm is really important. And that's part of why we put the open concept kitchen like front and center in front of the main doors, because that is, a kitchen is a place where in our homes, a lot of important conversations happen. And it's kind of the hub of a house, so much activity there. And so to have that front and center to kind of put people at ease, welcome them in, maybe it's offering them, a cup of coffee or a drink right off the bat. And that just kind of sets the whole tone. So I think welcoming, open, bright and airy and uplifting are really key to what we were trying to do for McCarty. The stained glass windows were a set of 3 from the original chapel that was part of McCarty when it was first built. And it was on the gable end of the chapel, and we reused them in a similar location for the new center.
What we have is a building that provides the state-of-the-art classes, space, workspace that you can find on a university library. And so because of that, I think you have at McCarty the opportunity to draw in even more people than we have in the past.
I mean, it's just the perfect place to be able to have a launching pad for reaching others.
I think the future is incredibly bright for the Student Center there.
Just like there were the Norman Starlings and the Carl Garners and, the Leonard Parkers and the Eddie Muchluckners of the past and the Frank Sharps. There are people like them working today.
I'm encouraged by the number of possibilities.
It's interesting that, my title is director, but there's so much more to it than just that. We've got a wide range of students who need somebody to help bridge that gap. And it's during those transition periods that's when Satan, when the world is their most active in trying to get to you. Yeah. My goal is to take a student wherever they are, whether they come as a Christian, as a seeker who doesn't quite know, but they know there's something, or somebody who's just completely antagonistic towards the cross. Wherever they are, I see my role as helping them to move along in that transition.
The one thing that probably needs to be the future, if it's not, is a greater impact and imprint on campus. And so, really want to try to get the Bobcats for Christ name in a greater presence on campus. People know Christians meet and gather here, and you can get Bible questions answered here. We want the center to be a place where people know they can come have their spiritual questions answered.
Many times the life and the vitality of a congregation begins with its youngest group. In my own experience at university specifically, when I've seen that congregation really, really doing well was when it was driven by the excitement and the enthusiasm by the campus ministry. And so when I look at what we do on campus, what we do inside the building in the McCarty Student Center, it is a heartbeat that goes through the rest of the body. It's one that excites individuals where they all of a sudden they see, wait, Josh is taking these students in a small town, smallish town, and they're sharing the gospel with people who many think have no interest in the gospel. What can I do? If he can, or if they can take the gospel to a very liberal campus and share it with them and have success talking with people about Jesus, then surely we can in our community. Our hope is that in the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, that people will begin to see Texas State as not just as a secular college, not just as a liberal party school, but they're going to see it as the next mission field, where if I want to be a soldier for the cross, I choose Texas State as opposed to whatever other college that I may look at.
There's no better mission field in all the world, or at least in the United States, than the college campus, where you've got a lot of young people who are searching and looking, asking questions, and they're away from home for the first time, and it's just a tremendous mission field right here in the United States.
The opportunities at McCarty are endless.
I'm feeling like that things are going to be good.
As you have just heard, it took the work of many devout Christians to make the McCarty Student Center what it is today. Bobcats for Christ has played an important role in the development of Christians at Texas State University. Its legacy lives on and remains as a tool to spread the gospel and serve as a light for others to see Jesus. Please join us in becoming a part of this great work to save souls and to glorify the King of Kings.